Yeah, well, a telling part of this statistic is the agri sector's impressive contribution to GDP in 2021. The sector grew by 8.4%. It was driven by the fisheries sector, which grew by 13.4%, whilst the forestry and logging sectors expanded by 4.7%. Now, how can this be improved or maintained this year round? Already, food prices have skyrocketed amid the high cost of fertilizer on the global market. Joining us to discuss are economists with the University of Ghana, Dr. Sarkodie, and Anthony Morrison, who is the Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I want to start off with you, Dr. Sarkodie. 5.4% from 0.4% indicates basically a strong economic rebound. Are we out of the woods yet, especially when we are really kind of recovering marginally from the devastation of COVID?
I think that it's an improvement over the 2020 figure. The economy is recovering, but for the Russia-Ukraine war, the economy will have recovered more strongly than what we see in 2022. But this is, of course, this is 2021 figure. So it was expected, and we know the sectors that were leading in the growth, the information and telecommunication sector. Even in COVID, this subsector was still growing. In fact, I was told that the telcos made over 60% profit during COVID. And so we have seen a shift of the economy. We know the drivers of the economy, which is the service sector. And I think that is why I've always supported the introduction of e-levy, because it is to the sector which is growing, and I think it's a good thing. But most importantly is the agri and the industry sector, which is supposed to employ more Ghanaians. The agri sector was growing or grew by 8%, as we were told, but we know that just this little effect from the Russia-Ukraine war, we have seen increment in food prices. So the question still remains that if the agri sector is growing and is still import dependent, then we have to answer some questions. So I want to see a more domestically produced inputs for the agri sector that is more sustainable than always depending on other countries for the intermediaries or the inputs into the agri sector. So it's a good sign that the economy is recovering, but most importantly, it must be based on local production, and then the growth must also come from areas that can create jobs. That is a more sustainable way of growing the GDP. And so it's a step in the right direction. We can do better than this in the year 2022 and 2023 going forward.
I want us to juxtapose this statistic from the GSS to the World Bank's forecast of a 5.5% expansion in our economy this year. I mean, how do you balance both projections from your perspective?
Well, I think basically the projections have been based on increases in commodity prices, given the fact that Ghana is the first producer of gold in Africa, and then the number 6 producer of gold in the world. We have seen increment in gold prices. Cocoa prices is also quite sustainable. We have seen increment in crude oil price. The government budgeted $62 per barrel, and now we are doing about $100 per barrel. So the increment in commodity prices have been the driving force for the public finance and also the GDP growth. And if there's any external shock to the commodity prices, our economy will badly be affected. And that is why there shouldn't be over-reliance on primary commodities. We should just add value and industrialize. So given the fact that the commodity prices have picked up, I think it's a good sign. And going forward, we must try and add value to our commodities so that we can sustain the growth. The most important thing is to sustain the growth. If we are able to sustain our growth between, say, 7 and 10% for the next 5 to 10 years, Ghana will be better, far better than what we see now. So my concern usually has to do with the sustainability of the growth. we can grow 8 and then you decline to say 0.4 or 1 or 3, and that would not, give us the needed benefits. So the sustainability is the most important thing. How do we sustain that? We do not control the commodity prices. The cocoa prices are always given to us. Gold prices, Ghana does not determine the gold prices. So all these commodity prices that are driving the growth are not determined by Ghanaians. They are determined on the market, and you don't have control over them. And therefore, we should be able to position our economy in such a way that we have maximum control over so many things, or maximum control over the drivers of the GDP growth. And when you have control over the drivers, you can create the needed jobs for the people of Ghana.
Dr. Edusako, we're grateful that I could help us out with the analysis on, the GDP estimate. Well, Anthony Morrison is the Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. He also joins us on this. Anthony, the performance of the agri sector in 2021, impressive. Where do you see its performance this year around, especially where we are seeing the remnant of, COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine war, its impact on global supply chain, which is even having, trickle-down effect on fertilizer prices? I'm afraid we're having issues connecting with Anthony, but we'll try and do that to get more of his insight on this matter. But Dr. Sako, dear, you're still around. How can we sustain the growth going forward? You have stated categorically that to sustain the growth would have to add value to our produce, but also help us understand the external factors to our growth pattern this time around. How can we, cushion ourselves against external factors, which, as you rightly stated once again, we have no, power over?
Yeah, we know the external factors usually, affect us. We have seen the effect on our city. Mostly we depended on external borrowing to sustain the value of our city. So when the government could not borrow, you saw the depreciation of the city and also the foreign investors taking, selling the sovereign bonds. And again, over the years, even since independence, we have seen how the fall in commodity prices, has affected our economy. In the year 2015, due to the fall in crude oil price, the finance minister at that time had to go back to the Parliament of Ghana to revise his entire budget. We have seen that under President Rawlings in all the regimes that have come. So we don't have to over-rely on these external things. And that is why there's every reason to link the agri with the industrial sector, with the industry, the manufacturing sector, so that we locally produce, for example, fertilizer. Now, because of the war, fertilizer prices has increased, and if we are able to produce our own fertilizer, this will help us, get fertilizer at lower prices. And there are so many of such examples of such inputs that can be done. So, first of all, let's locally produce some of these simple inputs into agriculture. And I've mentioned fertilizer, irrigation is there. And there should be a direct link between the agri sector and manufacturing. And I'm sure with this, we can build the structure of the economy strongly.
Indeed, indeed. Anthony, I would want you to pick up from where the economist left off regarding the agri sector and the need for us to add value to it. We do know that the agri sector last year faced its own challenges regarding supply chain, constraints. This year, we're also having a bout of the war in the eastern side. How much of an impact can this have on our performance in the medium to long term?
Judging from what we did, I think the challenge borders onto our commitment towards our agenda. Yes, of course, the supply chain will have an impact, or they have an impact on us now. 2021, it will have an impact on us because the COVID has made it in a way that the way we used to work before the COVID came, it didn't work that way. The production went down. Then, of course, we had a huge leap in the cost of freight globally, and that has also impacted negatively onto the supply chain.
All right. Okay. We're having some challenges, Anthony, hearing you out. So if you could reposition so we could really appreciate your submission proper. But even as you do that, what remains the existing threats to Ghana's food basket, and how imminent is the country to a food situation? I'm afraid we have lost Anthony Morrison there. The line's not being favorable for this conversation. But you heard him there, Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. But before we go on this particular topic, let's wrap up with Dr. Edusa Akodia. Doctor, so of course, Anthony Morrison is really in tune with your submission regarding the need for us to add more value to our produce. But help us appreciate the threats that exist when it comes to food security, the agri sector bouncing back, external donors and partners, most of these threats that often hinder our target and our progress economically.
Food security is key to the development of our nation. This country cannot afford, another scarcity of food, and that will deepen poverty. People will be dying out of hunger here and there, and therefore we must make sure that we ensure all-round food production. First of all, let's get the irrigations right, let's get the inputs right, and then also improve the storage.
All right. And
then get the price subsidized. If it's possible, the government can subsidize some of these inputs for the farmers. But my last submission now is I have traveled across many countries, and I think that Ghana is behind weighing the food items. It is about time that we weigh the food items on the scale, so that maybe a tuber of yam will, cost the same from Abubloshi market to the Medina market to any other market that you can talk about. This will also help harmonize all prices of food items.
Okay. Dr. Edusa Akodia, we're grateful as always for your submission on this issue. He's an economist with the University of Ghana.